Have you ever wondered why so many spiritual traditions warn against the dangers of love? Why do monks renounce romantic relationships while seeking enlightenment? Why do ascetics isolate themselves in the mountains, far from family ties? For centuries, we have been conditioned to believe that the path to spiritual growth requires abandoning earthly attachments, especially romantic and family love. We have been repeatedly told that to reach the highest realms of consciousness, we must transcend human emotions, including love. This perception is so deeply rooted in our culture that we rarely question it. But is this dichotomy true? Are love and spirituality really opposing forces, irreconcilable in our existential journey? Or could this be one of the greatest illusions we inherited from our ancestors, a false dichotomy that has limited our understanding of what it means to be fully human? Behind this seemingly simple question lies one of the greatest dilemmas of the human condition, and its answer may fundamentally transform the way we live our lives. Today, we are going to challenge this deeply rooted belief and explore a perspective that may seem shocking to many: the idea that love and spirituality, far from being opposites, may be different manifestations of the same fundamental phenomenon. To understand this dilemma, we need to go back thousands of years. In early human communities, spirituality and love were not separate concepts. Paleolithic hunter-gatherers did not distinguish between their connection with nature, their family bonds, and their experience of the sacred. Everything was part of a continuous fabric of existence. When a hunter killed an animal, he performed a ritual to honor its spirit. When a mother breastfed her child, this was simultaneously an act of love and a sacred act that connected generations. Love and the sacred coexisted without contradiction. There was no separation between the mundane and the divine, between carnal love and spiritual devotion. It was only with the rise of agricultural civilizations and their organized religious systems that we began to see this artificial separation emerge. Around 3000 BC, with the development of writing and the first urban civilizations in Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, and China, formal religious hierarchies appeared. Priests and scribes began to codify spiritual experiences into sacred texts, established rituals and dogmas. And here something significant happens. Spirituality, which was once a direct and embodied experience, begins to transform into an abstract and intellectualized system. The body, with its desires and passions, begins to be seen as an obstacle to spiritual purity. Love, especially in its erotic dimension, came to be characterized as a force that traps humans to the earth, preventing their ascent to the divine. We see this clearly in Hindu asceticism, where renunciants abandon family and possessions in pursuit of liberation. We see it in early Buddhism, where detachment from all emotional ties is considered essential to achieving nirvana. We see it in Christian monasticism, where celibacy is valued as a superior path of devotion. This separation was not accidental. It served specific social and political purposes. In hierarchical societies, where population control and social stability were primary concerns, restricting and regulating sexual and romantic behavior through religious codes was an effective tool of governance. By elevating celibacy and renunciation as spiritual ideals, religious authorities also consolidated their power over the masses. After all, who could question the moral authority of someone who renounced the pleasures that ordinary people could not resist? The narrative of incompatibility between love and spirituality was not just a metaphysical interpretation, but also an instrument of power. Simultaneously, Western philosophy, particularly after Plato, established a rigid distinction between body and soul, between matter and spirit. Carnal love was relegated to the lower realm of the body, while spiritual love was idealized as the only one worthy of true aspiration. This Platonic dichotomy deeply influenced Christianity and, by extension, all Western thought. Saint Augustine, one of the fathers of the Church, transformed his own journey from libertinism to chastity into an archetypal model of spiritual evolution, further reinforcing the idea that human love is an obstacle to communion with God. This same division appears in different forms in the great Eastern traditions. In Hinduism, the 4 stages of life, ashramas, traditionally end with the phase of sannyasa, where the individual abandons all family ties to dedicate himself exclusively to the spiritual quest. In classical Buddhism, attachment, including romantic and family love, is identified as the root of suffering. Even in Taoism, which in many ways celebrates the naturalness of the body, we find texts warning against excessive passion as a drain of vital energy. This dichotomous view persisted for millennia and continues to influence our contemporary culture in subtle but profound ways. Even in modern spiritual circles, we often hear that emotional attachment is an obstacle to enlightenment. Contemporary gurus warn their followers about the dangers of losing themselves in relationships, suggesting that the true spiritual seeker must transcend such worldly connections. The idea that we cannot serve both human and divine love simultaneously remains deeply rooted in our collective psyche. But now we arrive at a crucial moment in human history where this ancient dichotomy is being fundamentally questioned. Modern neuroscience is revealing that our deepest experiences of love and our highest experiences of spiritual transcendence activate similar regions in the brain. Both involve the temporary dissolution of the ego boundaries that normally separate us from others and the world. Both deep love and mystical experience involve a state of surrender and connection that transcends our isolated individuality. Brain imaging studies show that during states of deep meditation and during moments of intense loving connection, we see decreased activity in the posterior parietal lobe, the area of the brain responsible for creating our sense of physical separation from the environment. In other words, both love and spirituality can lead us to transcend the boundaries of the isolated ego that normally define our experience. This suggests that at the most fundamental level, these experiences may not be opposites, but variations of the same basic human phenomenon. Our ability to transcend the limits of the separate self and experience connection with something greater. Historically, this unifying perspective was not completely absent. Mystical traditions within major religions often recognized the deep connection between love and spirituality. In Islamic Sufism, human love is seen as a reflection and a path to divine love. Sufi poets like Rumi regularly use erotic metaphors to describe union with the divine. In Hasidic Judaism, the joy of conjugal love is considered a form of spiritual devotion. In Tantric Hinduism, sexual union is transformed into a sacrament that can lead to enlightenment. Even in Christianity, mystics like Saint John of the Cross and Saint Teresa of Avila employed intensely erotic language to describe their experiences of religious ecstasy. So, what is really happening here? Why do so many established spiritual traditions insist on the incompatibility of love and spirituality, while mystical currents within those same traditions often see them as deeply intertwined? The answer may lie in a more subtle understanding of what truly constitutes love and spirituality in their highest forms. Perhaps the problem is not love itself, but certain forms of possessive and egocentric attachment that we often mistake for love. Love, in its most mature and evolved expression, is not possessive or exclusive. It does not seek to control or dominate. It does not depend on the other to fill an internal void or validate one's own worth. True love is expansive, generous, and liberating. It is characterized by the same quality of open presence and acceptance that we find in the highest forms of spiritual consciousness. Likewise, perhaps the problem is not spirituality itself, but certain escapist and life-denying interpretations that we confuse with authentic spirituality. True spirituality does not require fleeing from the world or denying our humanity. It does not demand that we repress our capacity for connection and intimacy. In its most integrated and mature expression, spirituality allows us to fully participate in life, including its relational and emotional dimensions, while maintaining a broader awareness that is not limited by narrow identifications. Seen from this perspective, the apparent contradiction between love and spirituality begins to dissolve. Both, in their highest forms, involve an expansion of consciousness beyond the limits of the separate ego. Both involve a movement from separation to union, from fear to openness, from contraction to expansion. Both have the potential to free us from the prison of self-preoccupation and open us to a broader, interconnected reality. Technology and modernity have added new layers of complexity to this ancient question. We live in an era of unprecedented digital connectivity, yet many experience increasing levels of isolation and loneliness. We have more communication tools than any previous generation, yet we often feel less truly seen and understood. Romantic love has been simultaneously mythologized by popular culture and reduced to dating app algorithms. Spirituality has been commodified and packaged as just another lifestyle product for individual consumption. Amid this confusing landscape, many people are turning to simplified versions of both love and spirituality as quick fixes for a deeper existential malaise. Some seek salvation in romantic relationships, hoping that the perfect partner will heal all their wounds and fill all their internal emptiness, an expectation that inevitably leads to disillusionment. Others turn to spiritual practices as a form of escapism, hoping to transcend the complexities and challenges of human relationships, only to discover that these complexities follow them even in the most isolated retreats. Artificial intelligence is beginning to present new challenges in this domain. As we develop increasingly sophisticated AI companions designed to simulate empathy and understanding, we are entering uncharted territory regarding the boundaries between human connection and technological simulation. Some people already report forming deep emotional bonds with AI assistants, while others fear that these artificial connections may atrophy our ability for authentic engagement with other humans. The line between authentic spirituality and technological escapism is also becoming blurrier, with meditation apps and virtual reality experiences promising altered states of consciousness at the touch of a button. These developments raise profound questions about the nature of love and spirituality in the digital era. What does it mean to love in an age where intimacy is increasingly mediated by technology? How can we cultivate authentic spirituality in a world of infinite digital distractions? These are not abstract questions, but concrete dilemmas that shape our everyday experience as humans in the 21st century. I want to pause for a moment to ask, do you also feel this tension in your life? This apparent contradiction between your search for deep connection with other humans and your journey of spiritual growth? I know that for many of us, this tension is rarely articulated, remaining as an underground conflict that shapes our choices and relationships. Perhaps you have felt that you need to choose between dedicating yourself to a spiritual path or diving fully into human love with all its joys and complications. If this duality resonates with you, know that you are not alone. Share in the comments, I feel this conflict between love and spirituality when your experience may help others recognize and navigate this tension in their own lives. Sometimes, simply naming these internal dilemmas is the first step toward integrating them. Let us now return to the contradictions and paradoxes involved in this issue. One of the central ironies is that both spiritual traditions and romantic visions of love often promise the same thing: transcendence, meaning, liberation from suffering, union with something greater than ourselves. Both are presented as paths to overcome the fundamental alienation that seems to lie at the core of the human condition. Yet historically, they are often presented as mutually exclusive, as if we had to choose between the vertical transcendence of spirituality and the horizontal transcendence of human love. This apparent contradiction points to something profound about the nature of our search. Perhaps we are not really seeking two different things when we pursue love and when we pursue spiritual enlightenment. Perhaps we are looking for the same thing, a way to transcend the limitations of our separate existence, to overcome the sense of isolation that comes with self-conscious human awareness, to reconnect with a wholeness from which we feel separated. If that is the case, then the real question is not whether love and spirituality are compatible, but how they can be integrated into a more holistic approach to human development. Rather than seeing these dimensions as competing forces, pulling us in opposite directions, we could see them as complementary aspects of a unified path toward a fuller humanity. What might such an integration look like in practice? Perhaps it begins with the recognition that true love and true spirituality are both practices of opening and expanding consciousness. Both involve cultivating the capacity to be fully present, to see beyond projections and expectations, to offer radical acceptance. Both require that we confront and work through our fears, defenses, and conditioning patterns. Both invite us on a journey of self-knowledge and self-transformation. In practice, this could mean bringing the same quality of mindfulness that we cultivate in meditation to our intimate relationships. It could mean seeing our partners not merely as sources of personal gratification, but as other beings on their own spiritual journey, worthy of respect and reverence. It could mean recognizing that the challenges and frustrations that inevitably arise in close relationships are not obstacles to our spiritual growth, but opportunities for it, revealing aspects of ourselves that might remain hidden in the solitude of individual spiritual practice. Conversely, it could mean bringing the qualities we develop through human love, such as compassion, empathy, and the capacity for intimacy, to our spiritual search. It could mean recognizing that our connections with other human beings can be portals to transcendent and sacred experiences. It could mean understanding that our ability to love and be loved is not separate from our capacity to experience the divine, but an integral aspect of it. This integrated path is not easy. It demands that we face the challenges of both love and spirituality without seeking shortcuts or simplistic solutions. It demands that we stay present with the complexities, ambiguities, and paradoxes inherent in the human condition, rather than seeking refuge in dogmatic answers or escapist fantasies. It demands that we develop the capacity to live with open questions instead of rushing toward premature conclusions. On a collective level, this integration of love and spirituality has potentially profound implications for how we organize our communities and societies. Many of the crises we face today, from political polarization to environmental degradation, can be understood as manifestations of a more fundamental fragmentation in our consciousness, an inability to integrate the vertical and horizontal dimensions of our human experience. Spirituality without love can easily become arid, abstracted, and disconnected from the realities of human life. It can lead to a kind of spiritual narcissism where the pursuit of personal enlightenment becomes just another form of self-preoccupation. It can result in religious communities and institutions that, in the name of transcendent principles, perpetuate power hierarchies, exclusion, and even abuse. On the other hand, love without spirituality can easily degenerate into attachment, possessiveness, and codependency. It can become a sophisticated form of self-expansion where the other is valued primarily for how they make us feel or what they add to our identity. It can lead to relationships that, while emotionally intense, lack a deeper foundation of shared meaning and purpose. The integration of love and spirituality offers a path beyond these pitfalls. It suggests the possibility of a form of human existence that is simultaneously deeply engaged with the world of human relationships and capable of a broader perspective that transcends immediate egoic concerns. It points to the possibility of communities that are both intimately connected and oriented towards something that transcends their particular boundaries. Historically, we have seen glimpses of this integration in various contexts. We see it in monastic communities that combine individual contemplation with a strong emphasis on communal life and service to others. We see it in certain indigenous traditions where spirituality is intimately intertwined with family and community relationships. We see it in contemporary movements that seek to unite social activism with contemplative practices, recognizing that personal transformation and social transformation are inseparable. These historical experiences suggest that the integration of love and spirituality is not merely an abstract ideal, but a concrete possibility that has already been, at least partially, realized in diverse cultural contexts. They offer models and inspiration for our own efforts of integration, even as we recognize that each generation must discover this integration on its own terms, responding to the unique challenges and opportunities of its time. Looking to the future, it is possible that we are on the threshold of a significant transformation in our collective understanding of the relationship between love and spirituality. As old religious and social structures continue to dissolve, there is an unprecedented opportunity for new syntheses that transcend traditional dichotomies. Globalization and the internet are allowing dialogue and cross-fertilization between spiritual and philosophical traditions that were previously isolated. Science is offering new perspectives on the neurobiology of human connection and transcendent experience. The planetary crisis is catalyzing a growing recognition of the fundamental interconnectedness of all life. Amid these developments, we are seeing the emergence of new approaches that seek to integrate insights from diverse traditions with contemporary understandings of psychology, neuroscience, and complex systems. These approaches often recognize the profound interweaving of our capacities for interpersonal love, universal compassion, and transcendent consciousness. They suggest that optimal human development involves cultivating these capacities simultaneously rather than privileging one over the other. If we are indeed on the threshold of such a transformation, how do we navigate it wisely and effectively? How do we integrate love and spirituality into our individual and collective lives in ways that are genuinely emancipatory rather than merely repackaging all dichotomies in new language? How do we avoid both the false transcendence that denies our humanity and the false humanism that denies our transcendent capacity? These are not questions that can be answered definitively or once and for all. They are questions that each individual and each community must explore through ongoing inquiry and lived experimentation. They are questions that invite us on a journey of discovery that is simultaneously deeply personal and inherently collective. What we can say with some confidence is that the journey to integrate love and spirituality is one of the most important we can undertake, both for our individual flourishing and for the future of our species. In a world characterized by fragmentation, polarization, and converging crises, the capacity to unite the horizontal and vertical dimensions of human experience may be not only personally transformative, but collectively vital. Returning to the initial question, are love and spirituality incompatible? The answer that emerges from this exploration is a clear and unequivocal no. Not only are they not incompatible, but in their highest and most integrated forms, they are complementary expressions of the same fundamental human capacity to transcend the limits of the separate ego and experience connection with something greater. The apparent contradiction between them is not inherent to their nature, but an artifact of specific historical interpretations that served particular cultural and political agendas. Recognizing this does not diminish the real challenges involved in integrating love and spirituality into our lives. It does not magically remove the tensions that may arise between different aspects of our human experience. It does not offer a shortcut through the hard work of self-knowledge, relational growth, and spiritual seeking. What it offers is a more unified perspective that can guide us on this complex journey and help us avoid the pitfalls of fragmented and unbalanced approaches. In the end, perhaps the greatest irony is that the same spiritual systems that often warned against the dangers of love also identified love in its most expansive and universal form as the supreme fulfillment of the spiritual journey. God is love, declares the Christian tradition. Love is the religion and the faith, writes the Sufi poet Rumi. May all beings be happy, recites the Buddhist practitioner in their loving kindness meditation. These are not linguistic coincidences, but recognitions of the fundamental truth we have been exploring, that love, in its highest and most mature expression, is not an obstacle to spiritual realization, but its very essence. If you found value in these reflections on the integration of love and spirituality and feel that they touched something you have experienced in your own life, know that you are not alone on this journey. There is a whole community of people who, like you, are navigating the complex terrain of heart and spirit, seeking ways to honor both dimensions of their humanity without sacrificing either. By subscribing to this channel, you will connect with that community and gain regular access to explorations that seek to illuminate the existential challenges we all face in these extraordinary times. Each week, we delve together into another aspect of what it means to be human today, seeking perspectives that can help us live with more wisdom, presence, and wholeness. Join us on this ongoing journey of discovery and transformation. Subscribe so that we can continue this essential conversation about how to integrate all dimensions of our humanity into a more coherent and meaningful whole. Love and spirituality, far from being opposing forces in our lives, can be understood as different facets of the same fundamental human impulse toward connection and transcendence. When wisely integrated, they reinforce and enrich one another, leading to a form of human existence that is simultaneously more fully embodied and more deeply aware. This integration is not a fixed destination to be reached, but an ongoing journey to be lived, moment by moment, relationship by relationship, practice by practice. It is a journey worth undertaking, not only for the sake of our own fulfillment, but for the sake of a world that desperately needs human beings capable of uniting love and wisdom, compassion and clarity, engagement and transcendence, it is a journey that ultimately does not take us away from our humanity towards some purely spiritual realm, nor limit us only to human concerns, but invites us into a fuller humanity that is in itself an expression of the sacred. One of the reasons that the order of the world is collapsing is that we have deficit of trust. And it makes us extremely vulnerable to AI. And it also guarantees a very dangerous kind of AI that will try and probably succeed in taking the world from us. You can think about AIs as the children of humanity. When you try to educate children, there are the things you say to them, and there are the things they observe you actually do. And your behavior has far more influence on their education than what you tell them to do. So if we kind of tell our AIs, don't be power hungry, don't be untrustworthy, don't cheat, don't lie, don't manipulate, and then the AI observes us constantly manipulating and cheating and grabbing power, the AI will learn from how we behave. If the AI tycoon himself, or in rare cases herself, behaves in an untrustworthy way, he himself believes that all the world is just a power struggle, there is no way that he can produce a trustworthy AI. The good news is that this entire worldview is not just cynical and dangerous, it's also a mistake. It's not true that the only reality is power and that all human interactions are power struggles. Yes, power is an important part of the world. Yes, some human interactions or some part of human interactions, they are power struggles. And yes, some institutions or all institutions, they have problem with corruption, they have problem with people manipulating, but this is not the whole of reality. There are other aspects to human beings. Human beings, I think, are all of them, except if there are some extreme psychopath. They are genuinely interested in love, in compassion, in truth. This is not some cynical maneuver to gain power. What I would tell people who believe in the cynical, power-hungry worldview is just observe yourself. Is this the way you think about yourself? Do you think that you yourself don't care at all about the truth and you just want power? Probably not. You probably think you're different. If you have a better view of yourself, why aren't you charitable enough to acknowledge that other people, just like you, might also be really interested in knowing the truth or in having loving relationships with other beings? This is where we can start to build a more trustworthy philosophy, which is the only stable foundation for a good society and also for benevolent AIs. AIs are able to learn and change by themselves, to make decisions by themselves, to invent new ideas by themselves. If a machine cannot do that, it's not really an AI. So a coffee machine that just makes you coffee automatically, but by a pre-programmed way, and it never learns anything new, it's just an automatic machine. It becomes an AI if, as you approach the coffee machine, the machine, before you press any button, addresses you and says to you, I've been watching you for the last weeks or months, and based on everything I've learned about you and your facial expression and the time of day and so forth, I predict you would like an espresso, so I already took the liberty to make a cup for you. If it then tells you, actually, I've invented a new drink that no human ever thought about before, I call it Bespresso, and I think it's better than espresso, you would like it more, and I took the liberty to prepare a cup for you, then it's really an AI. Most information in the world is junk.
In just a word or two, explain why modern AI might destroy democracy.
The key issue is that democracy is based on trust, whereas dictatorship is based on terror. This extremely cynical view of humans is not true.
What you've done in your recent book, Nexus.
The book is about the history of information.
You offer a different lens for information.
Information isn't truth. It's not a question of helpful or dangerous. It's the magnitude of the change. We need more boring politicians, for instance.
For sure.
Suffering is the rejection of reality. One of the last stories that still connects everybody is the story of money.
This whole problem becomes much greater with AI.
AIs can make decisions. They are not just tools in our hands. They are agents creating new realities.
7,000, 25,000 unarmed civilians. Keep it light, you know?